Guten Abend. My name is Peter Höing, and I will serve as your moderator tonight. But first, I want to give a word to our chairperson, Professor Caroline Schaumann.
Okay, good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Caroline Schaumann, the chairperson of the German Studies Department, and I'm really delighted to see so many faces here and very much look forward to our German Studies Alumni Connections panel, which is sponsored by the Mellon Humanities Pathway grant. And that is a faculty initiative to help students and faculty understand how a humanities education can translate into professional opportunities in today's job market. So I would very much like to thank the co-director of that program, for my dear colleague, Peter Höng, for spearheading the event today. And also thanks to Sophie Falvi, Dominique Thiers-Schmidt, and Therese Watley-White for helping to organize it. I would like to give you just a few words and updates on our German Studies Department. We have a new assistant professor, Professor Didem Uja, who unfortunately is teaching right now, so she can't be here, but she works on migration and marginalized groups in German-speaking culture. And for the first time this year, we also have a DAAD lecturer in our department, Professor Frank Vogt. All of our faculty are teachers and scholars and highly active in their research and in their publications. And for our students, we are very grateful for having received 2 major grants this year from the Halle Foundations in Atlanta to help students to go with us to Berlin, Vienna, and Freiburg in both spring and summer of this year. We're extremely excited because we had to, unfortunately, cut our summer program in Vienna for the past 2 years due to the pandemic. So that means we now have several major scholarships to offer students to study abroad. In addition to the Halle funding, we also have the endowed Viola Westbrook Scholarship Fund and the endowed Seefried Scholarship Fund for taking students to Vienna. Our students double major in many different fields and disciplines. They have received many awards and they all are also active in their research. And this year we are also grateful to have 3 students who are pursuing honors research. So again, I want to thank you all for coming. And of course, especially I want to thank our 3 distinguished panelists today for making the time to speak to our students. Ida Blaser, Karen Eng, and Rishi Ganti. I understand you'll be introducing yourself, so I'm not going to do that, but we very much look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Professor Schaumann. And the way we structure this tonight is, as mentioned, it is part of the Melon Grant for Pathways in the Humanities. And for those of you who want to know more about the grant, I put in the chat a link to the grant, to the website that is administered by the project director, Dominique Schmidt-Thiers. And we are very thankful for all of you here, the alumni. And of course, this is done for the current students of us to hear what it means to do German studies and where it can take you. And hopefully you go away after this meeting and have heard from alumni and be, so to speak, enlightened of what is ahead of you in life. And without further ado, I ask each of our 3 alumni, Dr. Rishi Ganti, then Dr. Karen Eng, and Ida Blaser, to briefly introduce yourself to the students. And then I have a couple of questions for you. And about after 30 minutes or so, we opened up for all of those present to come up with further questions for you. So without further ado, Dr. Rishi Ganti.
Hey, everybody. My name's Rishi Ganti. I was an undergraduate just like you between 1990 and 1994. I did not formally major in German, let's say. I'm not sure what I formally majored in a way, but I will tell you I was heavily involved in the department in both language and literature, lived in the German house, did the Vienna Studies program, which I recommend to everyone after you've had some German under your belt, was a Delta Phi Alpha scholar, German national scholar, and had professional experiences while I was a German student in Trier and in Karlsruhe. So definitely colored my entire experience there. I'm happy to tell you about what you might expect and what you definitely might not expect, but will affect you.
And maybe briefly tell us also what you do now currently in your profession.
Sure. In a nutshell, and people ask me a lot, from Emory, I went to graduate school, earned a PhD in economics and a law degree. And from there, various jobs in finance, and eventually launched my own firm, Orthogon, it's right here, that invests internationally in what we'll loosely call unconventional or esoteric assets. And I will say German language skills do play a role, but there's more to it than that, which hopefully we'll talk about tonight.
Thank you. And Dr. Karen Eng.
Hello, everybody. Rishi and I are actually contemporaries. I went to Emory as an undergrad between 1990 and 1994 as well. But I was a declared German major, actually. And I did a lot of things while I was at Emory. I definitely participated a lot in the German house, but I actually stayed in the international dorm, which I think is no longer called Saunders, but it used to be, is there. So I was very interested in this, kind of international view. I actually was an exchange student to Germany in my senior year of high school, and I applied to Emory from Germany. And when I joined, I was really pleased to sort of land in a great group of people, very supportive. I had a lot of fun participating in things such as the Vienna program, for example. I really got into music and the history of music. We did at the International House at Saunders, we hosted events there every year, and I was always doing stuff for Germany. It was really fun, talking about different holidays, looking at ways in which people go to school there, and sort of holding those kind of programs. When I completed my studies at Emory, I had a very big interest in psychoanalysis, Freudian psychoanalysis, and postmodernism. So I completed a master's at University of California in Santa Barbara. From there, actually, I went on to Georgetown, where Dr. Hiram Maxim was as well. So he and I have a bit of a past. I got my PhD there, and I was focusing on psychoanalysis and postmodern cultural theory and German colonialism, and also understanding narratives of the self and historiography after the fall of the Berlin Wall and unification. That was a lot of fun. So I did a lot of things. I was a Max Kade Scholar at Washington University. I was a scholar at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. I was a scholar as well for the Smithsonian at large, working on understanding multiple narratives and historiography in Germany. I taught at University of Missouri, WashU, University of Washington, at several different places, and also at Tulane. And after that, I decided to go back and get an MBA. I've always been interested in technology. And so what I do now is I do software product management and digital experiences, which are very global, and look at how we build for the greater world when we talk about digital experiences. And the very first thing they gave me to do when I rolled out of business school, I landed a job doing digital. They gave me a team in Munich to run. So I spoke German with them every day, ran our projects in German and in English, and having that background and also having had taught business German was incredibly useful. So that's a little bit about me and what I do now.
Well, it actually is a lot, not just a little bit. Okay, thank you so much. And now Ida Blaser, or Blazer.
Hi, I am Ida Blazer. I was at the college from 1998 until 2002. I studied abroad my junior year to Berlin, the full year. I was a double major in German and International Studies. I went on after I graduated to be a Fulbright Scholar in Düsseldorf, came back to get my master's in English, and then did a series of jobs for small consulting companies, and then moved to a major consulting firm where I was for 10 years. Took a break to have my family, and now I am currently working as a German-speaking paraprofessional in a German immersion program.
And where's that?
The International Charter School of Atlanta in Roswell.
Oh, wonderful. So here with us in Atlanta. Great Atlanta.
Yes, I am in Roswell and speaking German with 5 and 6-year-olds all day.
They're good. Okay, thank you so much for your wonderful introductions. And we already learned a lot from you, but my first question to all three of you is really, now that you look back, that you can allow to look back to your time at Emory, what is it you wish you had known while you were at Emory student? Looking back, and what you know today, and now you said, oh, I wished I had known this when I was at Emory.
So I'll start. I would say that the number one thing is how poor I was at predicting what would matter. Most of the people on this phone call, let's say, are 20 years old plus or minus 1 year old. And you have some guesses as to what really matters and how something might turn out, or why this is good or why that's good. And I'll just assure you, I'm more than twice your age. It's very likely that what you're thinking is desperately wrong. And the kinds of things that will become valuable to you over time, even what you're studying in German or in anything else, will completely change. Something that may be very important to you later is the friendships that you make, both with other students and even with abstract things like literature. They may carry you through very difficult times in family relationships, marriage, your career, that will be there. And that's just not something people think about when they pick coursework or when they pick a major. So the most important thing I would tell myself, if I could take a time machine back, is just realize that some of your choices will work out well for the wrong reasons, and you'll make some of the good choices for wrong reasons, and try to appreciate things for not what you see them as today, but what they might be tomorrow. That's really hard to do, but that's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
And, you know, I'll take a shot at that too. If there was something that I wish I'd known, it would be to be super wide open to anything and just really embrace whatever comes near. And maybe it's a little bit attached to what Rishi is saying, where you're not great at predicting what you think is going to matter. There's just so many things that you will find an interest in if you're just open to them. And I think specifically of all the different internships that I did, one was at the Carter Center for sure. That was a fantastic experience. And I didn't know what I would do there. And just being that open and saying I can learn whatever you know, comes my way and just soak it up was incredible. And that's a really great openness that I hope you never lose, because I think you definitely can tap into it much more easily when you're younger. And I did other internships that I thought wouldn't be interesting, but they were fascinating. I had an internship in database architecture. I had a banking internship. These were all useful at other times in my life and definitely give me different abilities to have conversation with a wider scope of people. So one of the things I wish I had known was just how open you can be and how useful things that are completely unrelated looking can tie back later unexpectedly.
Thank you. That was well said. Ida, would you like?
Yeah, I would add, what you enjoy matters, and you should invest in the things that you enjoy, because careers are long. And if you're doing things that you don't like, then you know you will eventually burn out. So if you like something, even if it seems really random, invest your energy in it, be good at it, and you never know how that's going to pay off. But the people I know who are really, truly successful are the ones that are enjoying what they're doing, and they're putting their time and energy towards their talents and their interests, not some path that they feel is, has a good future ahead of it. If it's not fun for them, then it probably doesn't. So I would say if you like it and it makes you excited, and it's, take the classes that really, truly interest you. And those are the ones that you're going to remember 10, 15, 20 years later when you're looking back at your education, at the ones that made a difference in your life.
Wonderful. So I hear from all three of you, basically stay very open. Don't try to predict what is ahead of you, because things will turn out differently than you anticipate or expect. Let me turn this now, flip this around, so to speak, and I pick up of one of the questions that students were able to ask questions prior to this meeting. And one of the questions, to narrow it, is asking, how did you, all three of you, did you begin your journey with German studies at Emory? Do you remember?
I can start. I came ready to study German. I studied in high school and had a great experience. I was also an exchange student in high school, and I wanted to go to Berlin because I'm a city girl, and I was super excited to prepare myself and to get there, and kind of nothing would stand in my way. So I showed up with a lot of enthusiasm, but I know a lot of people find German later once they get there. But for me, it was German studies or bust.
Very good, thank you. And I should add that we got a Halle grant, and next spring we take 14 students to Berlin for, unfortunately, only for 9 days, but that's better than nothing.
It's the best city on earth. Meiner Meinung nach.
Okay, well, I know even better city, but we are not going there. Next.
I'll go. I was an exchange student to Germany in my final high school year, and I actually didn't know any German when I moved there. And it was so hard, to just like jump into high school in Germany and then be functional by the end of the year and actually complete it. I definitely came into Emory wanting to continue and learn more and know more. And so it was actually a matter of me, looking at the university and seeing, what it had to offer. I saw that, Emory had a large catalog of different classes. At the time too, they were bringing in guest lecturers who had a lot of cultural sort of bends too. So it wasn't just like language and classic readings, but also more contemporary things. And that was interesting to me as well. So I stepped right in and was really glad to have the chance to do not just German literature, but German cultural studies. And at that time, that was kind of new, or sort of a bit novel, right? And you had to sort of explain that out to other people. And I think in that way, Emory's German program was very forward thinking and very much, inviting and also leading the framework by which we talk about German studies in North America.
Thank you.
So for me, I walked into Emory. This is a trip down memory lane. At that time, it may still be true. Emory was really, really liberal with just waiving you out of requirements. So whatever the core requirements were for the undergraduate major, very quickly, if you had an AP course in this, or you'd taken a course in college in that, Emory said, you don't have to do that. So I walked into Emory having hardly to do anything. And most of my interests lay in what I'll call the sciences. So I was taking a lot of math courses and statistics, computer science. But I started German with literature. I had studied German, perhaps not at the level that others had, but 4 years of pretty decent high school German. So I started with a literature course, and it became extremely important, not just the subject matter material, but as you go through Emory, the relationship you'll develop with a professor, which can't be that deep maybe when you're a freshman, but as time goes on, they'll take you aside and start telling you about what life's about through the lens of the literature that they're teaching you. And so that kept me hooked. It was something that added a lot of dimension to me. But I basically started just by saying, hey, I took German in high school. I should continue and not just take math, statistics, and computer science courses.
Wonderful, thank you. That brings me to another question is, now that you cultivated through your humanities education in German, what has served you taking German as your major in your professional journey, and how did it serve you? And maybe give an example where you can show having taken German really opened door X or made this possible or help you in one way or another.
I can take a stab at it. I think in general, German studies, learning German, prepared me for the consulting world, in that you have to develop a comfort level with not knowing exactly what's going on in the moment, having to step into a situation that's very uncomfortable, perhaps awkward, maybe even embarrassing, and just be bold, be brave, be confident in that moment. In the consulting world, that served me a lot, because you go into a lot of situations where you're very unfamiliar and you have to learn quickly, and you have to adapt to a new environment where maybe they are not using terminology you're familiar with. They're not, it's in an industry you're not familiar with, and you have to quickly kind of learn a new language. And having been through that process and having that inner confidence of, I cannot know exactly what's going on, and that's okay. I can learn it, I can do it, I can get to a place where I can communicate with people and build understanding. That's been helpful in my professional and personal life.
Thank you.
I think I alluded to how German was really powerful for me coming right out of the business school curriculum, fresh with an MBA. I think the guy who hired me told me actually that the way in which I distinguished myself as a job candidate was the fact that I spoke German, and he needed to have this team run in Germany. The working language for the company was English, but it always helps if you know the local language and you can communicate with the teams and their partners, their commercial vendors in German, which I was able to do. And at that time, we had our meetings every other day, and we conducted them entirely in German because that's what the team was accustomed to. So there are many places in my professional life where surprisingly German has just been super useful. I work at a company now called F5. We build massive infrastructures for communications. This call is, for example, built on our technology. It's pretty much white labeled. But the fun thing is it's a big global company, and our headquarters is here in the United States. And I run our German Kaffeestunde, which is a lot of fun. So all these people from around North America, now we do it by Zoom, but when we were in the office, I was organizing that, and it was a great way to network because there are German speakers all over the company who are in different pockets and different parts of the company entirely. So I could bring things there and say, hey, I need some help with this, or this is what I'm working on. And they knew. So it's been actually a lot of fun, and also a bit of a novelty. So that's my current, working life. And of course, I was a professor of German studies for several years prior to my career change. So that would definitely be a way in which German and my studies at Emory have very much made an impression on my professional life.
Thank you for sharing that. And Rishi?
I'll give an answer that's a little different. I think for Ida and Karen, there's very direct applications of the German that they've done to the work that they've had. I actually have those as well, but I'd rather not talk about them. In fact, in a lot of ways, since leaving Emory, my German has changed to where, if you know what an Eichhörnchenschwanz is, I would say, oh, Katzelschwaf. It's a completely different word. And if you don't know what I mean, that's totally okay. All right. And that kind of change in making a human connection mattered because I travel in circles where actually the German speaker in question probably has good English, and that will continue to occur. So English has become the lingua franca of the world in journalism, commerce. I was at a hotel in Turkey, and it was clear that the person entering was Italian and the other person was Turkish, and they were speaking English to each other. You just see that a lot, but there's some human connection that happens sideways if in fact you can speak. I wouldn't really call it Hochdeutsch. I would just say the dialect that is spoken there, and I don't claim to speak too many dialects very well, but there's that. But to go further than that, I would say a couple more things. The first thing I would say is that the intellectual technique that you can learn if you go far, again, I didn't major in German, but I studied a lot of literature, will be useful to you later. I was very fortunate to study, for example, constitutional law under someone who actually is now a Supreme Court Justice, Elena Kagan. And if you are reviewing Rilke, as I was telling Peter, line by line, and a very incredible gentleman who unfortunately is deceased, Max Aue, takes you right back to the start of the line and makes you do it again. Then he takes you right back to the start of the line and makes you do it again. And you look up all these synonyms that Rilke could have picked but didn't. And then you have to come up with every single reason why that word was picked. Well, I could tell you that helps a lot in legal interpretation. I could tell you a story like that. The ultimate story, though, that I really want to say, though, is that the study of German, especially German literature, and there are various, the big authors, there's Grass, there's Mann, there's Hauptmann, there's so many, and including, I remember when I started reading German feminist literature, as you grow up, you're going to grow up further, right? You're going to have big issues that happen in your life. Starting a family, I started a firm that has some international renown. And the problems when they hit you will hit you like a tsunami. It is much better if you have no idea why the world is doing what it is to you, you feel completely lost and persecuted, that you have already read Kafka. All right. It is much better if you are armed with a few of Kafka's books before that happens, so you can help interpret the experience and live through it. Ultimately, that's what I would tell you to do. And it's not the question posed like, well, how can German help me in my career, is very undergraduate, because it's very cause effect. It's almost like, is this question going to be on the test? That is a very undergraduate thing to ask. And I would just say, the benefits to you will be very, very unexpected. I would just say, take it far. And when those unexpected benefits happen, they'll be bigger when they do. And that German to me has really helped shepherd me, I think, through a lot of challenging situations as I approach basically 50 years old.
Wow, that was very powerful, all three of you, and very eloquent, and addressing some of the questions that actually student asked. Stepping outside of your immediate professional engagements on which you talked, did the studying on German enrich your life in regard to your civic or volunteer or services within different communities in which you lived or live? Did it help you in any particular way outside of the narrow confine of meeting people that speak some German?
I would say, first of all, I guess this is not part of the question, but I actually worked for the German government for a short period of time, city government. That was one thing. And that was very enriching. Never would have happened. They don't have a guy of color coming in and working for the city. I worked in Karlsruhe for Stadtwerke Karlsruhe. And I went back and even visited there. It's the city works, right? I worked in water. Mm-hmm. We do it ohne chlor. We do it without chlorine treatment like you do in the US. Okay, I understand. There are other things, for example, and Karen had an experience like this that she mentioned. I was at a finance firm that's very well known. It's called Two Sigma Investments. We had a couple hundred employees at the time, but I was the only one who really, really knew German. And there was a mini scandal that hit the German press that involved an employee at Two Sigma because he was a DuPont, one of the famous DuPont family members of America. They came to me and they said, can you write a letter denying these allegations? He has nothing to do with this. He's just been drawn in because he's a big name. I said, sure, I'll get around to it. They said, no, do it today. I said, why? They said, because Der Spiegel has written. I said, Der Spiegel is not contacting you. No, it is. And they showed me a letter, and then they showed me one from Frankfurter Allgemeine. I wrote a letter on behalf of my American company saying, hey, we don't know what this is going on, this gambling circuit thing. And that letter was read aloud in German parliament. Wow. And it was excerpted into every single major newspaper in Germany as well. I would say all of those things were there. It's not exactly the ambit of the question.
Right.
If I had to do the ambit of the question, I would just say, if you study German literature, people around you will appreciate the perspective, especially 20th century German literature. Okay, it doesn't have to be Goethe. People around you will appreciate a strange, wizened perspective that you seem to have beyond your years. That I would be the short answer to your question. I'm sorry if I took too much time off of the topic, but that's what I would say.
Very, very interesting, fascinating. For the students of mine that are listening in, they of course know that I have also a weakness for someone you mentioned, that is Goethe, and I would argue that it's still useful to read some of his stuff. Okay. Maybe Karen or Ida, do you want to answer that question too? How basically having studied German helped you in a different way to connect with different kind of communities outside the immediate professional arena?
I think there are many examples. Some of them are just fun. When I travel, there are German speakers in every corner of the world. Every time I travel, I've been able to do things like take tours in Guatemala with other Germans, and you just get to meet different people. It's fun to see that kind of worldview. There are also some really particularly fun things, like I showed up in Hong Kong and the entire city was sold out because there was a giant event, but I overheard these Germans talking about how they were going to check out. So I went up to him and I was like, hey, when you check out, I'm coming with you because I'm going to check into your room. Funny. Also in Hong Kong, there were some Germans who I had met or were having a health emergency. And I was able to translate for them Chinese to German and get them to the appropriate hospital facility, things like that. So there's a lot of funny places. And even more casually, just having knowledge of German literature. I agree with you, of course, Peter. Mm-hmm. I was asked to give a talk about why product management certification was important to my teams in India, and I found myself like quoting Matthias Claudius, and you can't believe that, but many places where knowledge of ancient literature, older literature, or deeply held poetic beliefs resonate, and that culture is certainly one of them as well. And if you can show or make illustrative connections, people appreciate that no matter where they come from, right? And these are still valid today because they tap into something deeper in our psyches where we want to be part of a deeper sense of humanity, and certainly literature does that. And it also transmits a certain type of, I would say, of knowledge base, right? You're not only proficient in what you're doing at the moment of hand, but you've studied the world a little bit too. And that's interesting to see and recognize in other people. And it's fun to pull out of your pocket when you can. So those are a couple of the examples that I would give, but it's never far away. I had someone at work recently join our team, and she said to me, oh, what was it like to leave your German studies behind, right? Because I used to be a professor of German cultural theory. And I said, I never leave it behind. It's with me every single day, because the way in which you have to understand other civilizations, looking at unpacking what they actually mean, I think learning German makes you an extremely close listener to what people are saying, right? And it makes you incredibly self-aware of that moment in time when you're dialoguing with somebody, and you never lose that. So I think, gaining all these other skills that come along with German knowledge, language, and civilization are definitely present in my everyday life.
Wonderful, thank you. And
To just add, I also studied English, and I understood English a lot better after I learned German, because I understood grammar, I understood the roots of English, how it evolved, and it makes me definitely a better writer, understanding more about my native language, having learned another one.
Let me just add one more point there. Actually, I just made me think of something. Think of the German language as also an insight into how people think. In German, what's the word for oxygen? Sauerstoff. What's the word for protein? Eiweiß. What kind of a people would say egg white or sour stuff would convey these chemical concepts? A pretty clear thinking group, right? And if you spend enough time with that group, especially sideways, whether through conversation or again through literature, it's going to start altering you neurologically and make you a clearer thinker. It just happens, and it shouldn't be forced. And we all talk about, well, we should have a diversity of perspectives. This really is one, and it's built right into the language as a whole. And Ida's comment just made me think of that.
mm-hmm. Wonderful. And it reminds me, Emory recently introduced a new general education requirement. It is that students have to have at least one course in race and ethnicity issues across different disciplines. And you just nailed it, Rishi, by saying that actually taking another language is really a training in reconceptualizing difference, so to speak. Before we open it up to the students present here, one last question that I have, and that is, what is your favorite memory from studying German at Emory? And I should add, none of them studied with me or with any other present of my colleagues.
I'll start. I have a quick answer. I was very fortunate, and I was telling this to Peta, that to know somebody named Garland Richmond, who is an emeritus professor at Emory. And he was the dean of scholars and would host these events for people on scholarship at Emory. And one day, what I told you earlier happened. He pulled me aside, and because I was thinking about taking basically Wirtschaftsdeutsch, like some kind of economic German, and he pulled me aside and he said, Rishi, why do you think you're here? Or what do you think you're really trying to learn? And he said, did it ever occur to you why none of us are really language professors? We're literature professors who sometimes teach language. And he brought me into this. He said, you're here on a philosophical journey. You've got a couple years here while you're young and you're impressionable to get into your head some concepts that have stood the test of time. We're talking eons, thousands of years. You better go for it. That was a very short conversation that we had off campus at a retreat. And that statement haunted me. I contacted him as recently as a couple months ago. I had to track him down in Washington. You will do the same, eventually track down your professors. And I had to thank him, because that notion that kept ringing around my head year after year, and including for decades, basically caused me to be a much better person than I otherwise would have been if I'm only thinking about cause and effect, or what can this do for me? Or how do I credentialize myself so I can follow some path that probably is irrelevant 5 years from now, and just flow with some societal river. That's it. That was my favorite moment looking back.
Thank you for sharing that. And let me add briefly that our department tries to bridge and overcome that bifurcation by just separating language learning from literature. We try to bridge that from day one in our one-on-one classes and so on. And thanks to Professor Maxim's incredible knowledge on that issue. And maybe Karen, do you remember also such a succinct moment when studying German at Emory?
I definitely do. I could talk about the Vienna program, but maybe done that before, and I think that'll come up again. For me, I had an incredible experience with a visiting assistant professor at the time named Elizabeth Mittman, who's now gone on to, I think she teaches at University of Michigan. That's my understanding. And she is the one who actually said, you're so interested in this, you should go on and, pursue advanced degrees. And it hadn't occurred to me actually before then. And to be really inspired by someone who's looking at this through a critical, cultural point of view, and to have sort of the plurality of background that she had was really great. So I just really remember lots of great conversations with her. And also she, I think, started with Angelika Banner, German film studies program. And this was a new and fascinating thing for me too. And from that, I have a lifelong appreciation for, German films, film in general anyhow, but German cinema for sure. And wherever I've lived, and here in Seattle, we have a big Goethe Institute. There are always film repertories or film series that represent the German-speaking world, and I always attend. So it's definitely a lot of fun, and having that experience at Emory was impressive for me.
Thank you. And Ida, do you also have some memory of something that really captivated you?
In one of my poetry classes, we compared and contrasted German poetry, medieval German poetry with modern hip hop. And I've never stopped thinking about it. Every time I hear a new hip hop song, I'm thinking about the themes that were in the German poems. Themes of masculinity, themes of wealth, power, and it's just been something fun that I've always remembered that conversation we had, and smile when I think about it, when I find a connection.
Of course, I'm curious to find out who taught that.
I'm keeping my secrets.
All right. At this point, I'm inviting all students, and we have so many with us. I'm very happy to see that, even though I don't see all the faces, but I'm happy to see that we have many of our students, current students with us, and the floor is open for them. And as you probably heard, and this is addressing the students, is maybe try to think outside of the box, as Rishi said more than once. Don't see taking German as a cause and that later does that and that effect, but rather see it as something that opens doors in many different ways. But I don't want to forego your question, so please go ahead. And don't be shy.
Like Charlotte has a question.
Okay, I don't, oh, there it is. Yes, Charlotte, please.
Hello, thank you all for the wonderful sharing. And I have a question about graduate school experience. As a senior with double major and a shuttle minor, I struggle with finding a graduate program that fits with my academic interests. And I wonder, did you go directly to graduate school after undergrad, or did you take some time off and explore more before you enter grad school? And how did you make that decision?
I have one short comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Rishi.
Short comment is, if you're doing something in the sciences or mathematics, do not wait. You will not get better. So if you're talking about language or literature, as you'll probably hear, because we have people with advanced degrees in that, I don't. I got a PhD in economics and a law degree. But if you're doing anything quantitative, computer science, statistics, just do not wait. There's kind of a decay that will happen on your head as you go into the world of work. I'm sorry about that. Right now, people are stuffing information into your head at a rapid rate. That does not occur at work. The point of work is you are the input, your work is the output. Whether or not you learn a lot from work is incidental to the phenomenon, right, or the social compact that you're engaging in. That's all I would say about that. If you're thinking about humanities, I believe it to the two experts on this panel.
I did a Fulbright year, and then I went to grad school, mostly because I found a program that interested me, and I went for it. But I didn't personally feel any particular rush. I just kind of took some time to look at programs and find something that I really felt excited about, and then just applied and went from there. And then I didn't rush grad school. I took my time and I worked and did other things as well. So but I was very, I don't think I would have wanted to wait too much longer. Like Rishi said, even with not being in sciences or mathematics, there is being out of academia for too long, I feel does make it harder.
Would you have considered your Fulbright not a part of academia? Would you say your experience?
I had a teaching Fulbright, so I was teaching high school. So no.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what it means to wait, because I just think that whatever life experiences you're garnering, you're just going to take with you anyhow. So between undergrad and grad school, I went to China and I taught English there, and it was really fun. It was a great way for me to actually feel almost more resolved going back to graduate school. I had also maybe a new appreciation for language acquisition. My family doesn't speak Mandarin, and I had to suddenly learn how to get around in Mandarin. So that was definitely, different for me. When I returned, I went to graduate school immediately. I was super broke, so I camped on a beach for 4 weeks while going to graduate school, because your graduate school fellowship check doesn't show up until the first of the next month. So
Right. I know what you mean.
I was telling somebody this story, and I said, that was the closest to homeless I've ever been. And they were like, you were camping on a beach? You were homeless. So my first month of graduate school, you just take all kinds of experience with you and be super open, and what you think you're going to go in for, may or may not change. I would say if you're going to get serious and finish a PhD, treat it like a job. I think one of the biggest things that I saw as I was finishing my program, I think the department even had budget for like a PhD commiseration group club, like finishing your PhD. And I went to exactly one meeting because I realized these guys are never going to finish their PhDs. They're going to hang out, eat pizza, and drink beer. I mean, really take it seriously and put yourself on your own goal and say, I want this, and make it happen for you. And I wouldn't worry so much about what happens in the intervening time. As long as you sit down and enter your graduate program with resolve, it'll work out well. I think entering at the wrong time makes it hard for you to do it. But when you get in, and this is what I would say also of my cohort, if you go in with the right focus and know and have the intent to finish, you do. And for those folks who feel pressured to go in and I want to get this better, or, I should just do this now because I should, don't finish on time, or, linger a lot. So, make sure it's the right decision for you. And if taking off a year is the right thing for you and you can enter with more resolve, then maybe that's the right thing.
Karen made me think of something that I should mention. The PhD is not just like the MBA, but higher. Okay, it's not that. Earning a PhD is going into a long tradition of very high scholarship. If you are trying to get a PhD because you just want those letters after your name, or you think it's the next thing to do, I will say very directly to you, you are not wanted in the graduate program. I'm sorry to be that direct. It is really there to generate people of letters and scholarship. I'm still surprised I did not become a law professor. I'm still wondering if that were a mistake. You are really searching for knowledge's sake. And Karen was very clear about, she kept using the word resolve and words like that. you will know, you will not seek additional external reward other than the privilege of studying what you are there to study and pushing that knowledge level forward, whether it's interpretive, as it is in most humanities disciplines, or somewhat more concrete, like there actually is some quantum of knowledge that wasn't there that you put into the world in a science. Okay, so I do want to make that clear. And if taking some time off will help you figure it out, if you want to devote yourself to something without any regards to what it's going to provide to you, a PhD program is for you. There are other sorts of graduate schools that I call professional schools, like law school, medicine, business school. What I said does not apply to those. Go do those. If you like that career, great. If you don't, a lot of people go to Yale Law School and they absolutely do not practice law. That's great too. But if you're going to a PhD program, you should be in love, L-O-V-E. You should be in love with the discipline.
I'd add to that too, not just in love, but like really celebrating the fact that someone has given you the keys to creativity and freedom, and you can't abuse that. You need to come away with something that you can share and broadcast to the rest of your fellow community of scholars, or add to, the community of knowledge that we share as humans, so it's not just love, but really understanding that the commitment and the honor that you have is rare, right? And I would say too as well that I agree with Rishi that there are other professional schools, like I have an MBA from University of Texas. That certainly is a bunch of schools that you can point to. And there's not the same freedom and creativity that is in those programs at all. It almost feels like professional training school by comparison, right? And these are two very different things. So if you want those skills, go get an MBA, and then you can sit down and unpack taxation and talk about business process or whatever it's going to be. And that is really truly a skill, and is very different from entering a PhD program. And being really clear about the resolve you have to ask yourself a question that's fresh for humans and answer it for on behalf of us. That's an honor you should take seriously, right? And it's a hard one to translate. Like sometimes, families may not understand, your friends may not understand where you're going with that. And that's okay for a certain time, but you need to land with the love of your life and finish that PhD. And when for you, you will know.
Thank you so much. And I should add to that is really to Charlotte, is that any one of us in the German Studies Department is also here to help you to navigate these questions that Karen, Ida, and Rishi all posed, and to figure out which pathway is the right one for you. So we are here also to help you to address that, any one of us in the faculty. We have time for another question from students directly. John, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Yeah, I really learned a lot from what you said. I'm curious, wondering, is there one sort of piece of German literature, text, author that you sort of often goes back to, that sort of is sort of really sort of guides you, and then I'm curious what that is, and you recommend that to us.
Thank you, John. So basically,
the one thing about art is that art comes alive not in the substance of itself, and not necessarily from the person who created the art, but from the person who is experiencing the art. And so if you know me, like I can be a person who finds himself in challenging situations. I'm kind of scratching my head. How do I get out of this? How did I get into this? For me, and only for me, someone like Kafka became very important. And that could be excruciating for you, because the books that this gentleman has written and his issues with his dad may just drive you nuts. But for me, I said, thank you for telling me that somebody else is having these feelings, and maybe I'm imagining. So I would just try to, and again, with conversations with the German department, talk a little bit about who you are And that will tell you about the kind of literature that may speak to you the most. And that might not be what spoke to me there. But I would push early 20th century German, okay, authors otherwise. Okay, so that's what I would say.
Very subtle, Rishi. Okay, Karen or Ida?
Ida, did you want to start? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Oh, so hard to choose. I think one of my favorite things to do, just period, is sit down and read German newspapers. And I listen to the German news pretty much every day. I have a Google Home device and it's super easy. So, you know, I'm a huge news junkie. One of my favorite things lately has been, I found this thing called Wahlautomat, and you go through like 30 different questions about culture and civilization. And at the end, it spits out who you should have voted for in the last German elections. Playing this as a bit of a game with some of my friends here. And actually, I have some friends from Canada, and we were at dinner, and we just debated through all of these different issues for like hours. I'm not kidding. So like 1 or 2 in the morning. They had me asking about things, you know, they were asking me about, you know, and I was like providing a lot of different contexts. And it's really interesting, just based on that, you see a lot of ways in which people are thinking about, we're facing the same problems. We've got pandemic, we have imbalances in the generation, so we're going to run out of Social Security. We are all facing energy shortages and crises. And how does everyone go about solving it? How do they frame the questions? Those are fascinating for us. And I love bringing that stuff up, even with my friends, or thinking about it, because it challenges how I even look at, you know, how do we police here? How do we shape democracy? What do social programs play? You know, and maybe that is a good frame to start talking about how I see just specific critical thinkers, right? So I'm a huge fan of Habermas, for example. I'm a huge fan, of course, Sigmund Freud, like these core thinkers who launch 1,000 ships in the German newspapers, you know, BZ or Zeit. They're really great columnists who are just reflecting on our times, you know, and I just love the art of rhetoric. And that is maybe, it's not a lost art, I think, in American news or the way in which we write today, but it certainly isn't the same. There's an elegance, there's a tradition, there's a body of knowledge that comes with reading the German newspapers. And I really enjoy that and I revel in it. And, you know, if I can share that with other people, even in the English speaking world, I love doing that too. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but yeah, that's interesting to me.
And of course, Ida kind of answered it already by saying that she enjoyed so much the course, a particular course of comparing Middle High German with hip hop, you know. But Ida, do you still want to answer John's question?
Nothing in particular, but to that point, I'm the non-PhD on the panel, so I would just say if you don't find a piece of German literature that you really connect to emotionally, that's okay too. There's lots to be had from studying German, even if that is the case for you. So that's all I would add.
All right, thank you so much.
Let me add one quick regret. Actually, one regret that I had was I took a lot of survey courses, a lot of little yellow books. Okay, so if I'm reading Hauptmann, I've had people say, "How did you read Hauptmann? You've never read Hauptmann." Banwärter Thiel. It's about this big. You can read it. Okay, he's written one. So if you have the shot, I never took a course like where all we did was like Buddenbrooks. Okay, I didn't have that, and now I wish I had.
Nice.
You have to take a risk because you will not know what the work is about, maybe ever in your life, but you certainly won't know what it's about when you start the course. You have to take a leap of faith. I would take a big leap of faith and have one, if you can, shoulder it, one big work and not just another survey and another survey and another survey. So all I know are short stories of various authors, and that's my fault.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
I'll
actually.
add one more thing too. For those of you who are,
may I briefly respond to Rishi's, and that's actually good input for us as faculty of the courses we should offer, maybe more, because we tend to indeed go to more breadth instead of focusing maybe on one larger piece. Thank you so much. Yeah, Karen, sorry.
No, that's okay. For those of you who are thinking of graduate studies, specifically in Germanistic, you will be asked to know another language there. So any advice I have to you guys would be to start picking up that other language other than German. There's a requirement. The other thing that I did while I was at Emory is I studied Old Icelandic with Professor McMahon. And that was really, really fun. What's even more fun is I started to, learn it, and then I went to Iceland and I couldn't understand it when I heard it, but I could read it. But again, for those of you who are thinking of pursuing advanced degrees in Germanistic, you will also be asked as part of that study to learn an ancient German language. It could be Old Icelandic, it could be Middle Hochdeutsch, could also be, I think in some places, Old English. So getting a start on that in undergrad is super useful. So while I was at Emory, I started learning Spanish towards that other language requirement, and I actually did use and did pursue Old Icelandic for my old ancient German languages qualification.
Wow, impressive. Thank you so much. And maybe we have time for 2 more questions. Who wants to go next? Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen. Maybe I can see you, but maybe you need to unmute first.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my connection's not the best. Well, first, I think it's very cool that there's so many lit people on the call. I'm an English major, not a German major. So, and I was just wondering how you guys have kept up your German after college. I know somebody talked about doing a Fulbright, but I was wondering just kind of from day to day if there's anything you do to maintain those skills.
Thank you. That's an excellent question.
I think
Mine's easy. I speak German all day in my job, so I took the easy route.
Easy to say.
I think for all of us, there's going to be a similar answer. I mean, we don't have Ida's job, but if you put enough into it, you're not going to be able to stop, because it's going to surround you in different ways. So just yesterday, I was trading baby pictures with friends of mine. They live in, this is going to be hard to describe, in like a suburb of Graz, okay, in the Steyr. So we just, I don't know how so I do know what I know about German waxes and wanes. And so some aspects of it will be better, some will be worse. I may pull out a book and not have seen it for a long time, or I'll play a movie and maybe miss a few things, but I'm not actively trying. And I bet, Karen, you're not actively trying either. It just happens. Am I right?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, you get to make good friends in Germany. Certainly my host family is still there, from high school. And you just, they're, especially now, because you can text so easily, they'll just ping me and I'll ping them. You'll swap photos, just like you described, or bits out of a newspaper or silly comics. They're on my Facebook. The place where I do very intentionally make sure that I stay in touch with German is, like I said, I listen to the news. There's always the Nachrichten in 100 Sekunden. It couldn't be easier. It's 100 seconds to blow through the news. And of course, you can always just watch the regular newscast, and I just play it on my home speaker on my Google Home device. And it just couldn't be easier. And it's, if you're a news junkie, that helps a lot.
So with what Karen said, for me, Italian is not natural. I speak 6 languages professionally. Italian is not natural. There's not a reason I would keep up with it except for my business counterparts. I don't claim to have friends over there. But to what Karen said, I've switched to defaults on some of my things. So if I go to Google News and read the news, I'm going to get Italian language news that I had to filter out all of the fashion and all about the cars and all about the movie stars. But if I go there, you know, my mind knows, okay, it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to read all these English language news articles that Google feed is feeding me. It's defaulted into something else. So just look at your default choices. Maybe Karen, that's what you were sort of saying. Look at your default choices. But I only had to do that for Italian, because otherwise I think I would go to 0 in Italian in a few months if I just didn't keep it up.
I mean, I also tell my German friends to send me books, and you can get a lot of things on your Kindle, but I actually like physical books. So they've sent me books for presents, which is nice. So things that I wouldn't normally see, or what's the book that everybody is reading, they'll send me that. I mean, it's kind of easy that way when you start to know friends and like be tied into their lives and they're tied into yours. But to Rishi's point, I'm chuckling a little bit because I do have at work, and I'm on my work computer, a lot of stuff just put into German just for kicks. And I did a presentation a couple months back with PowerPoint and whatever. And I was showing stuff and I was switching between PowerPoints. And this guy says to me, he's like, whatever you're showing is fine. Is your PowerPoint in some other language? Like what? Because he could see my entire screen. I said, yes, that's in German. And they're just funny, subtle ways for you to just like, integrate that in your life if you want to. It could be also kind of fun to just do. But, there are places where it's very conscious for me. Like I want to stay on top of current events. Also on my streaming music services, I've got that, for German playlists. And I also have like German radio stations just popped in there as well. Every time like I have people over for like a dinner party, we're always listening to like Antenna Bayern or something, which cracks people up, but I don't know, it's my style. And that's a fun way also to keep up with what are news, what are cool songs that are happening. It's funny, I'll play, like the German radio in the background if I'm just working. And I remember one day I was thinking, it's not raining. And it was because the German radio was playing in the background and it was saying it was raining and it's going to be rainy and cloudy. And I was just so into it when I was, but it's nice out. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the weather forecast for a completely different other place. Mm-hmm. You can get into it even in your own ways if you like to. I think it's a lot easier now with all the connectivity that we have. I think back to years ago where you had to actively do things like subscribe to a newspaper and pay $1 zillion for it. And you can actually just read all that stuff now, or just as Rishi described, actively just be signed up. So, your news feed has those things in it. In your Facebook or whatever, or on TikTok, you can just sign up to a lot of different accounts that have, German language and German content.
Thank you. And of course, we often do that now. We can teach things that we couldn't do years ago, simply because we have access via internet to bring things into our classes and teaching. So we have time for one last question. Who would like to go last? And thank you, Stephen. And who would like to go to be the person for one more question for our wonderful alumni panel? Yes, and so that's Daisy, another thank you coming. Well, if there's no other question, that's fine too. We spent more than an hour together and had a wonderful opportunity to listen to 3 of our alumni. And I believe there's even more alumni with us tonight, I'm not sure. But as you see, for all of us visible, there come thank you from our students. And on behalf of all my colleagues in the German department, I also want to thank our particular alumni panel. And want to close also by giving one more time thanks to those who helped to organize that. That is our own alumnus and our academic administrator, Therese Wortley-White, but also special thanks to Dominique Thier-Schmidt. She's the senior project coordinator of the Melon Grant. And of course, also Sophia Falvi, who is a senior program coordinator who brought us all together for this particular alumni panel. So thank you, everyone. And I hope that many of the students that listened in today got encouraged to take classes with us. And as you have heard, not from us this time, but from the alumni, it is worthwhile to invest the time in studying German and to go out and learn as much as you can from different literature that we offer. Thank you so much, and I wish everyone a wonderful evening.